It's now day 41 of the war in Ukraine, and Russia continues attacking key Ukrainian cities under its phase 2 of this invasion. Several regions of the outskirts of the capital city of Kyiv has been attacked. Chilling images of damaged motorway bridge in Stoyanka, a suburb village in Kyiv region, has now come to fore. Ukraine also claimed that Russians shelled Mykolaiv with cluster munitions. 10 people were killed, 46 injured. Ukraine has now issued a warning for a full-scale Russian invasion in the eastern parts of the country and possible attacks on areas along Kharkiv and Luhansk. A day following the horrific Bucha massacre, Russia has now denied all these claims of attacks on civilians, while Ukrainian President Zelensky blames Putin, terming it genocide. Zelensky will be addressing the UN Security Council today. They've also predicted, Ukraine has now predicted worse instances of mass killings of civilians in other liberated areas by Russian troops that would be discovered. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden has called Russian President Vladimir Putin a war criminal, saying that he would call for a war crime trial over Bucha massacre.
He is a war criminal, but we have to gather the information. We have to continue to provide Ukraine with the weapons they need to continue the fight, and we have to gather all the detail so this can be have a war crime trial. This guy is brutal, and what's happening in Bucha is outrageous, and everyone's seen it.
India Today's reporters on ground bringing us those informations and all the factual details, bearing all the odds. Gaurav Sawant, who's currently en route Bucha. Gaurav, give us an understanding. They're seeing large-scale civilian casualties, bodies in Bucha piling up, while Ukraine blaming Russia for this genocide, Russia calling this orchestrated, saying Ukraine is now falsely putting out images only to feed the Western propaganda. How true is this massacre, as they call it, in Bucha? What's the situation like in most parts of the suburb of Kyiv?
So there has been a lot of loss of life and there has been a lot of loss of property. The killings, Ukraine says, has been done by Russian soldiers, and now they've sought a team of international investigators and forensics experts who've reached Bucha to carry out a scientific investigation in terms of when postmortems are carried out. All of them, they're trying to assemble together scientific evidence to be able to prove a case in the international court that these were war crimes that were carried out by Russia. That's what Ukraine's government is saying. But right now, we are on our way to the Hostomel airbase. Remember, this is where the AN Antonov plant is. It's one of the biggest air bases, and this airbase was continuously targeted from the day the hostilities started on the 24th of February. Now the Ukrainian forces are in control of this area, but there is a lot of unexploded cargo or unexploded bombs in this area. And again, a lot of civilians were targeted. So right now, I'm in an armored vehicle with an official of the Ukrainian army, and we are on our way to Hostomel. No channel has so far got access, the kind of access that we are hoping to get en route Hostomel right now. We are on our way, and the loss of life and the loss to property has been tremendous in this area. It's been tremendous in this area, and we are with our team of interpreters and Ukrainian army officials trying to get to Hostomel to be able to get you details of the ground realities, again in one of the worst affected areas. Remember, it was Irpin. India Today has reported from on ground in Irpin. It was in Bucha and it was in Hostomel. Now, Irpin and Bucha, we've reported from ground zero. Hostomel is the third location that was targeted, and that is where we are headed right now, Nabila.
You know, Gaurav, we know that Russia has been using superior arms and ammunitions, and Ukraine, as much as it's getting help and military aid from Western countries, it isn't able to match up. Do you think Ukraine will survive this onslaught, and how many more days? We're looking at phase 2 of this war, 41 days and counting. What's the future of this war as you see it?
So, Ukraine is fighting and fighting very hard, and like you said, 41 days and counting. And if we were to talk about this area, remember Hostomel, and I'd like to show you the kind of damage that is visible here for a moment. I'll ask camera person Lalit Mohan Joshi to show you the kind of damage that's taken place in this area. Lalit, just show them the damage here to the building in front. We'll show you the damage. To look at this. Look at this. This is the Hostomel airbase, and this is where a lot of buildings were targeted by the Russians. This is the impact of the Russian missile strikes that have taken place in this area. And India Today is the first channel to get you ground realities in this area. So far, 41 days and counting, Ukraine has been able to fight. Now the battle has shifted from where we are in Irpin, Bucha and Hostomel towards the south and the east, and Ukraine is asking for S-300 missile defense shields. It's been asking for tanks, and it's been asking for fighter jets. It hasn't got any of these three. It's got the Switchblade drones. It's got the Bayraktar drones, which have played a very key role. It's got the Javelin ATGMs. It's called the Stinger surface-to-air missiles. And now it's getting the Starstreak surface-to-air missiles. So all of these are very good defensive weapons, but they work only when the threat is already inside your territory. Ukraine now is seeking weapons that will be able to counter the Russian forces beyond. We are at a checkpoint, and Nabila, we will keep our cameras down for the moment.
Right, we understand, Gaurav. Our reporters there have been bearing all the odds and the hostilities, the threat of strikes there, and bringing us those details from on ground, this war-torn country. Gaurav Sawant showing us large-scale devastation. And these images that come in from Bucha, where Gaurav Sawant is currently en route to, really breaks our heart. Civilians at the end of this war becoming the real victims of this onslaught by Russia. Russia, of course, refuses to descale. In fact, despite several attempts of ceasefire, Russia continuing to attack in several parts of Ukraine, including the suburbs of Kyiv, which has now been their prime target. Now, we see global outrage over civilian killings in Bucha. Ukraine has accused Russia of war crimes in Kyiv suburb. Ukrainian President Zelensky has termed the killings as genocide, while Moscow has now called Ukraine's version of Bucha killings a fake attack. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden has now sought a war crime trial against Russian President Vladimir Putin. Here's what you need to know.
On the streets, inside houses, in the fields, when Russian forces retreated from Bucha, a Kyiv suburb, bodies of civilians were found strewn across the landscape. Many of them had their hands tied. Since the withdrawal, horrific images of mass grave sites have emerged. The footage from Bucha has sent shockwaves across the world. Ukraine has accused Russia of war crimes. As outrage builds over war atrocities, Moscow has termed the killings on Kyiv's outskirts a fake attack.
The other day, a fake news about an attack in Bucha was doing the rounds. But the Russian army had left the place according to the agreement. A few days later, a fake stage video was spread through social media by Ukraine and the West.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Monday visited the town and met with the residents. He called the killings a genocide.
It's war crime that will be recognized as genocide by the world. You are here and you will see what has happened. We know about thousands of killed and tortured people with cut limbs, about raped women and killed children. I think it's more than genocide.
Reacting to the images of dead bodies in Bucha, US President Joe Biden once again called Vladimir Putin a war criminal.
You may remember I got criticized for calling Putin a war criminal. Well, the truth of the matter, you saw what happened in Bucha. this warrants him, he is a war criminal. But we have to gather the information. We have to continue to provide Ukraine with the weapons they need to continue the fight. And we have to gather all the detail so this can be have a war crime trial. This guy is brutal. And what's happening in Bucha is outrageous. And everyone's seen it.
Germany, which was accused of being soft on Russia due to its dependence on Moscow for gas supply, has also called the killings a war crime.
The images of the past weekend have once again highlighted a new, brutal dimension of this war, with the most serious war crimes and crime against humanity. And that is why I made it clear over the weekend that we must not only close the remaining loopholes in the sanctions system, but that we must also intensively and rigorously implement this package.
As per international law, civilians cannot be deliberately attacked in a war. Pictures coming from Bucha are appalling and clearly show the violation of the code. But indicting Putin for alleged war crimes is easier said than done. This leads to another question. Are economic sanctions the counter to Putin's alleged atrocities in Ukraine? With Gaurav Sawant in Kyiv, Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, in the border city of Donetsk, rocket attacks continue. India Today's Geeta Mohan is the only Indian journalist in the restive border area. She was on ground zero in the Kyiv district where rocket hit a neighborhood there. Residents recall their tale of horror and how they had to escape from that window as that area came under complete attack. Let's have a look.
Multiple rocket attacks here in Donetsk, and one fell right into the heart of Donetsk city in Donetsk. This is the crater that was created because of the rocket, and if you see around me, the houses completely destroyed. This is an area which is a residential area, so the neighborhood over here was in shock, and the house, the owner of this complex, this house, she has a child who is in shock right now. They did not know what really happened. It happened late in the night, but thankfully it fell in the yard. So there has been no loss of life over here. But the backyard and the shed around completely destroyed. Alice will speak with the owner of the house over here that is most affected. What really happened, Alice, if you could explain to us? What's her name?
Меня зовут Елена.
Yelena, what happened last night when the rocket fell?
Что произошло, когда ракета упала? Мы спали, было тихо, ничего не предвещало беды. Мы спокойно, нигде не стреляли, мы ничего не ожидали абсолютно. И я не слышала никаких взрывов, на меня посыпались стекла, со стен штукатурка, все, что можно было, мебель стала разбиваться. Я проснулась, испугалась, я еще не поняла, что к чему. Я побежала в спальню к ребенку. И увидела, он тоже проснулся, испугался.
It was the usual quiet night. They sleeping, and the shell came. The glasses, parts of the walls out on the sides. She stands, grabbed her son, and took him, and the door was blocked, so they came out from the window and went to the neighbor's house. The fire was still in their yard.
Important over here, look, the door over here, this is how the door looks, which means the impact of the attack, the rocket, was so huge that this entire door had a lot of the debris. And so they could not open the door. It has been pushed in, if you can see. So they could not open the door. That's why they came out of the window. And now the child is in the care of a neighbor because he is in complete shock. Alex, they've been suffering this for a while now in terms of Donetsk, but it has intensified. How scared is this neighborhood that has suffered real damage after a long time.
Да, здесь уже у нас в нашем регионе на протяжении долгого времени идут прилеты иногда. Но вот сейчас как вы ощущаете себя? Чувствуете ли себя в безопасности?
Конечно, нет. В этом районе, где я живу, таких прилетов не было. Мы даже не ожидали. Обычно окраины страдают города. Но мы здесь как бы привыкли, что стреляют, но мы не думали, что сюда может прилететь такой большой снаряд и разрушить. Просто повезло людям, что все остались живы. Просто очень повезло.
She said they are very, very lucky to stay alive after this shell. They expected some shells near the front line, but here is the center of the city, so they wasn't ready that something can happen here.
See, a lot of this is happening in the frontline area, not in the heart of the city. Helena, I hope you take care, and I hope your child comes out of this trauma. A lot of children in the whole of Ukraine, in Donbass, in parts that are affected, are being impacted. There is trauma that they're suffering, and her child also has suffered the same trauma as many in the entire neighborhood. This is one house that has been attacked. There are some others too, because we were hearing loud explosions, multiple rocket attack within the heart of Donetsk. With video journalist Satya Rautre in Donetsk, Geeta Mohan for India Today.
Let me quickly cut across to Sviatoslav Yurash, Ukrainian MP, joining us for an understanding on what's happening in Ukraine. Yurash, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. We understand that Ukrainians now believe that Russian troops could be repositioning along the eastern region of Ukraine. This comes as a massive threat because your massive towns like Kyiv, Luhansk, those are areas that could come under security threat if at all Russian forces there continue their attack along that region. How true and legit are these fears that you've raised?
The reality is that it's not just expectation, it's a reality. The Russians are trying to send their forces to the front lines in which they are causing most havoc. And what you see in Mariupol, for example, is just devastation, hell on earth. And they are trying to continue that in other cities of the eastern part of Ukraine. But again, we in this situation will be bowed. We won the Battle of Kyiv. They haven't regrouped here, they have fled en masse, leaving lots of their equipment, machinery behind. We will continue pushing, and we will continue getting the Russians to understand that they have no place in our country, that we will get them out.
You know, Yurash, we laud your spirit and courage. Ukrainian forces have been resisting this onslaught. But nonetheless, when there are fears that are raised that Ukrainians could possibly face an onslaught along the eastern region, could that mean that this would cut off Ukraine from the east altogether?
By no means. The reality is they have not been able to even take the territories of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Not to mention that that goal which they thought they would take in the first day, Kharkiv, which is one of the largest cities in Ukraine and has been resisting bravely no matter what Russians throw in terms of artillery or air power onto them. So the point here is that, again, we are showing very clearly to the world that the East is something that you cannot cut off or take away from Ukraine, any part of Ukraine for that matter. But in the East, we are putting the fight that will be in the history books.
You know, Yurash, the images of this war that comes to fore from Bucha is shocking, horrific, and heartbreaking to say the least. Bodies there that have piled up. But Russia, of course, taking no responsibility for this. In fact, Russia has shifted the blame on Ukrainian troops, saying that this is entirely orchestrated. These are images that have been falsified only to feed the Western media propaganda.
The reality is Russia has been lying many, many times over, not just over this war, but throughout Mr. Putin's rule. And that's been the policy of Russia, not just about the wars they waged, but assassinations they conducted within other countries, poisoning of their own opposition figures, and blatant violation of every single law, whether it's international, local, or moral, or ethical. So as there was never a reason to trust Putin, so there is no reason to trust him now. And the reality is that Bucha is full of evidence, and journalists from the entire world, especially India, are there to tell you and show you the facts on the ground. The facts are dead in their innumerable quantities, showing Russian policy towards Ukrainians that they will implement in other towns. And believe me, this is nothing compared to what we'll find out in other parts of the occupied Ukraine, especially the moment the Mariupol story is fundamental, because there you have had a city of 500,000 that's been devastated, and only about 100,000 there by any measurement are left, and the fate of others is unknowable, as the Russians are killing all the journalists who are getting into Mariupol.
You know, Yurash, as you travel there, we see some kind of movement. Is it safe enough for you to show us what's beside you? We'd like to see the environment where you are at.
This is the Kyiv region that I'm traveling. The Kyiv region, we have won the battle here. And the reality is that in the Kyiv region, we are showing that we aren't just about throwing Russians out. We are also about caring about the people that have remained or have suffered or are returning to their cities. So the point here is that we basically have delivering today humanitarian assistance to many of those towns badly impacted by the fighting.
You know, Yurash, at this point, as we see civilian casualties there in numbers across different parts of Ukraine, you have your own people who are now petrified to stay put in those areas which they call safe. How are you instilling confidence in Ukrainians to stay back and not flee? We know millions have already fled. Many more have stayed back because either of no choice or their loyalty towards the country. How are you really instilling the confidence among your people?
The reality is there's no need for any effort. I mean, this war is about our very existence, our future as independent state. So for us and for Ukrainians that have been living their normal lives, from 24th February onwards, there is no choice here. They are just fighting to continue with their country being their country. So the reality is Ukrainians are really convincing. And our nation, largest nation in Europe, a nation of far more than 40 million people, we have plenty of around the world, will be resisting, as it was resisting in times of my great-grandfathers, and trying to show the world that a fight for freedom has a future.
Yurash, many of your civilians have doubled up as soldiers. You yourself, we believe, you have been aiding your own army. Have you taken up arms yourself? Yes, 133rd Battalion.
It is my battalion, and I was just visiting a base. Again, we should be relocated more east, but we'll see in the coming days.
Do you have it with you? Do you have your ammunition with you as you move about in the capital city of Kyiv?
Yes. Well, basically, we all the members of parliament.
Would you be able to show that to us, please?
Yeah, well, there's a gun that I always carry around, especially it's part of the law when you know you should not leave your gun, and basically, especially as somebody who's been mobilized in the military, you carry a gun around. So that's the policy.
Yurash, you're an MP. Have you received any kind of training on how to handle this weaponry? Would you fire if in case you see a Russian soldier in front of you? Is there any kind of sensitization that many of you as civilians, who have absolutely no understanding of arms and ammunition, have received right amid this war?
We already was involved in shootouts, in shellings, going through minefields. This month has been quite a month from every angle you look at. The battles around Kyiv is something I was involved in. As far as the military training is concerned, I am together with my battalion, who is extremely experienced and has fought throughout the 8 years the war has raged in the east. And but you learn pretty fast when you fight for your life.
Yurash, you know, really all heart going to you and lauding all your courage and your effort to stand up for your country in the face of this kind of onslaught, and Russia, of course, showing no signs of de-escalation, and that's why we worry for your life and for your people. Thank you very much. Please do stay safe.
Thank you very much. All the very best.
Well, Ukraine is indeed a very beautiful country. At one point, it was filled with cities bustling, several tourist spots there, people coming in only to take a good look at the beauty and the glory that Ukraine boasted of at one point. Once brimming with life and urban settlements, now reduced to complete rubble. Here are some of those images coming in from Ukraine of towns that were either in ruins or have completely turned into ghost towns. These images coming in from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, coming from the port city of Mariupol there, which was the country's 10th largest city. You see how earlier this port city, a beautiful port city that had life, full of life, modern metropolis it was, in fact, full of art, culture. More than a month now into this war, the same beautiful city of Mariupol has now been left decimated, as shown in these images from the port city that documented the large-scale destruction caused by Moscow's ongoing assault in Mariupol. Here are images coming in from Irpin, which is called the strategic city, providing northwestern access to Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. And on the left-hand sides of your screens, you see what this lovely city really looked like before war. People there very happy, moving around in such beautiful environment. The infrastructure, the beauty of this city was really well known. But post the Russian invasion that shows images of now of Ukraine and this city of Irpin there, where high-rise buildings, including malls, public and residential buildings, they're completely reduced to shambles. And this, again, the town of Bucha. We've seen large-scale atrocities coming from the town of Bucha. A small city on the outskirts of Kyiv is now left with a trail of destruction as Russian forces retreated this area. Bucha massacre has killed the lives of hundreds of innocent civilians, making it the most barbarous action of Putin's war troops. And here, the city of Odessa, home to more than 1 million Ukrainian residents, is a city filled with industries from shipbuilding, oil refining chemicals and food processing. Images on the right-hand side of your screens here, capturing an oil depot on fire, a gush of black smoke that's seen emerging out of that depot.